Hello, it's Story Therapy Sunday. It's a new day and abundance is here. My name is Bisola-Mariam. If you're watching, mainly this is the content of the African network, the Left-Handers African International Organization. It is the original content of our non-profit organization. And we are on Facebook as we're on Facebook as the Left-Handers African International Organization, the Network Against Stigma and Abuse. Okay, if you're watching, of course, on Facebook, we are also on Instagram as at the Left Handers Club NG. So I'm going to be streaming on two platforms. I'm going to be streaming here on our Facebook page, and I would also go live on sorry, our Instagram handle. All right, so I'm streaming on both platforms right now. Okay, so what are we doing today? We've been talking about, you know, abuse in the last 3 weeks, and today is week 4 of the series on domestic abuse and on the series on abuse basically. And I recall that during one of our sessions, I emphasized that you know, as against popular belief, abuse is not just um, it's not just physical. Okay, when we talk about abuse, we talk about violence. A lot of times, we simply focus on domestic. We simply focus on physical abuse. Nobody really talks about emotional abuse, right? We minimize the experiences of people when it comes to emotional abuse because we're conditioned to think and believe that what really constitutes abuse is when you have physical mark or someone hits you or there is a scar that is seen. And a lot of times for folks who are going through emotional abuse, it's technically, more of unseen scars in the sense of nobody sees it, right? But you're going through it, you're suffering it, you're experiencing that pain. And so the goal of the Left-Handers African International Organization is to educate you so much more that you become an advocate yourself and you stand for and speak for all kinds of abuse in whatever shape or size or form, whether it's overt, covert, direct, or indirect. You become a voice for the oppressed. And of course, you get the clarity and confidence if at all you're suffering from a toxic interaction, relationship, so you know what to do next. And most importantly, so that you also heal from whatever trauma that is causing you to be abusive or be that person who, you know, somehow is just out there, but you're making the world a terrible place because you're suffering yourself. And so we're not just talking about, let's stand for abuse, let's stand against abusers. We're also interested in, creating a healing framework or trauma recovery framework for people who may be open to getting healing, because a lot of times it is important that we know that sometimes healing might be available. Some people don't even think anything is wrong with them. So it is important to know where to draw the balance, and that is what this community is for. So today we're doing a recap of all that we have touched on in the last 4 weeks. So when we started this series in the first week, in the first Sunday in January, we talked about the types, what exactly abuse is. So I defined abuse. I said abuse is any form of behavior that seeks to oppress, to control, or to manipulate in whatever form. So when you're trying to control or distort someone's reality or to force someone to accept something or think a certain way, then if you're doing it directly or you're doing it indirectly, it is abusive. And interestingly, one thing that I want you to also add to your knowledge about abuse is that deception and lies are forms of are abusive behaviors. When you deceive someone, the reason why you're deceiving is so that you make someone believe a certain reality. So deception itself is a form of abuse. When you tell lies, okay, it's a form of abuse. When you tell lies, it's what? A form of abuse. Before my laptop goes off, I'm going to have to get my charger. All right. As I was saying, when you're making the effort to distort someone's reality, you're lying, you're deceiving people, you are being abusive. That add that to your collection of the definition of abuse. Abuse is any behavior that seeks to control, to manipulate, to twist somebody's image, cause them to doubt their reality. Anything in that category is abuse. And so I also went on in the second week to talk more about the fact that abuse is not just limited to physical and that there is emotional abuse. And I also emphasized by saying that emotional abuse even happens to be the one that a lot of people are struggling with, and we don't really talk about it. And it is like it stares on our face, it stares at us on a daily basis. And so my goal, when we talked about that in the second Sunday during the second series of the story therapy series, I kind of explained more on how you can identify emotional abuse, right? I mean, how to differentiate between physical abuse and emotional abuse. Physical involve physical violence when someone is trying to get you to do something, and if you don't say yes or you say no, the person hits you, throws things at you, if not at you, even when the person throws something in a different direction, it is physical violence. You know, when kids, for instance, are throwing tantrums, they are angry, they want you to listen to them and you don't listen. And that kid begins to what? You know, throw tantrums, break plates, break things. That's physical violence. So a lot of times we think that adults are the only people who may turn to physical violence. Children have the tendency to be violent as well. In fact, have the tendency to become physically violent. And it is important as parents to begin to pay attention to the temperament of our kids. And if kids are becoming angry, it's not enough for you to see a small hole on the child's ear and then you say, ah, because ọmọ yìí létí, ó lutí, ó lutí wá látọ̀run, ó máa lágídí. That's not a basis. So what I'm saying is some parents we have the superstitious belief that when a child has hole in the ear, the child naturally will be violent. I don't think that's true. You need to, of course, when you begin to believe that reality for your child, then you're saying that this child will be violent. And as you express it to the universe will agree with you. And the root of many of the challenges that a lot of grown-ups, you know, people are dealing with is as a result of the things that have been said about them growing up. Parents call them, you have big head, and you don't listen, you're stubborn, you're troublesome. And so they embody that personality. Those words that you have said to them, the universe has accepted it, and somehow they begin to behave that way. And so even as parents, we have the role in molding our children to become who or what we want them to be, because broken children will make broken adults. Broken child, broken adults. Broken child, broken adults. So let's move on. I also talked in the third week of the story therapy series, I talked about um I went on to now start describing, you know, the different forms of abuse there is. I said that when it comes to, you know, abuse, there is domestic abuse, what domestic or family abuse. This is the type of abuse that takes place within family setting, between siblings, between brothers, I mean siblings, husband and wife, spouses, okay, or parent children relationship. All of this kind of abusive behavior are what we call domestic or family abuse, right? It happens within family setting. Now, there is social network abuse. Social network abuse, when I talked about that, is the type of abuse that happens within work setting, school setting, organizational setting generally. Social network abuse is the type of abuse that takes place within organizations. Organizations can be church, can be mosque, can be a non-profit, can be a for-profit, can be a school, a college, a university. College, of course, is also university, right? It can also be something that happens within dormitory, within seminary, within you know, a prison setting. Basically, organization abuse, or something you can also call social network abuse, is the second type of abuse that I talked about. If you missed that video, please make sure to go watch it on our Instagram page or go to the Facebook group to catch the past session. In the last week, in the last session, last week, I extensively talked about religious abuse. I talked about the ways in which religious leaders weaponize God. And when I was talking about that, I broke things down. I wanted you to understand that there's a difference between being a faith person and a religious person. I also emphasize that it is very important that you, as a person, cultivate having a relationship with God. When you have a relationship with God, you will not listen to what every deacon, every, in quote and unquote, every person out there, what they say. You don't listen to religious, you know, stories or fables or myth, okay? And because, some pastors or imams or religious leaders, whatever the religion, they know that people are vulnerable. They know that people are most likely not going to check for themselves what the truth is. People are most likely going to believe what they hear. So, there's something called truth default theory. When you tell somebody something, they are most likely going to believe it. And so that's why propaganda, spreads. People believe things without really trying to verify, knowing the truth. And again, a lot of times, fact is not necessarily what the truth is. I mean, appearance or reality may not necessarily be the truth. But of course, as human beings, religious leaders prey on our vulnerability, and when they do that, they weaponize God, and then we listen to what they say without really trying to verify. And so last week, I wrapped the session up by saying that it is important that you have a personal relationship with God. Have a relationship with God. When you have a relationship with God as a man, as a woman, or whatever it is that you identify as, you at least know who to call on. You at least know who to run to. You don't just listen to what people who are also humans say. Because as a matter of fact, when you listen to people who call themselves men of God or priests, and you don't have personal interaction with God, you know the danger? The danger therein is when they say things that are wrong, you won't believe God, because you believe in the God in them more than the God in you. And so, if you have a personal walk with God, you know that when there are situations where, you are, the man of God is sleeping or has done something that society, based on societal standard, is wrong, you still know that God is God, right? You don't no longer trust in God because a man of God is no longer, doing what God wants. And so you also are not judgmental, knowing that even a man of God is human. And so believe that every human is fallible, and trust more in God and what God is capable of doing in you, not what a man of God is capable of doing in you. And you see, when you prioritize your relationship with God, you won't always go to all church activities. It means you don't have relationship with God. Like, God will tell you what to do, what not to do. Not going to mountains upon mountains and not having personal fellowship with God. Not joining all the religious prayers or fasting. At least if you have a walk with God, you know when to fast, when not to, what to do, what not to. And so when you have a relationship with God, it helps you to set boundaries. It helps you to not to know when people are trying to manipulate you, when people are trying to make you doubt your reality, because they are thinking of themselves as higher beings more than you. We all are higher beings, whether you're a pastor or an imam, whether you're not even a pastor, even you who claims to be, even if you claim to be an atheist, right? You are a higher being because you are created in the image and likeness of God. But what would make you not operate at the realm that God has placed you is your lack of knowledge. But when you have knowledge, when you have information, when you are mindful, when you have clarity, no one can make you or make you feel less than where God has placed you. Okay? Nobody can make you feel less or put you less than what God has created you to be. And I hope that today you have learned a couple of things. Every Sunday on this Instagram page, on this Facebook page, if you're watching on Facebook group, okay, I come here live to share ideas with you on the ways in which you can recognize first understand what abuse is. Secondly, understand what it feels like to be in toxic settings, whether it's an interpersonal relationship or work relationship. How you, of course, as a person, can heal from your childhood trauma and become non-toxic and not attract toxic people into your space. And lastly, I also talked about the ways in which you can better be equipped to be that voice that speaks and advocates and supports and encourages left-handed people or other people out there who are suffering from stigmatization on a daily basis. And I hope that you, in your space, on your phone, while watching, can tweet, share this, broadcast this, invite people to join our Facebook group, get people to follow us on Instagram, so that we can continue to create this awareness so that this campaign can reach the end of the earth. I really appreciate you for joining if you're watching live. And if there is any topic you want us to talk about, if there's any question you have, you want us to answer, if there's anybody you want us to sometime invite here to share his or our story, we really look forward to having you share your inputs by dropping a comment in the chat or sending a DM, or just reach out, okay? And by before the end of the first quarter, our website will be up and running, and you'll be able to see other free resources that you can easily go to and have access to and watch or listen to or even read. We're hoping to make resources available to you for free, or depending on whatever works for you with time. And before I leave, I just want to remind you that you are the best version of you, and there is nobody that can do you more than you. God has created you perfect. God has made you lovable, amazing. No matter the situation, the stigma, the difficulty you're going through, God has the best plan for you, and nobody can make you feel less than yourself. So, whatever it is that someone is doing or saying to you that is making you feel less than who God has called you to be or than who you are, remember that what you say about you is final, not what somebody says, because you are God and God's representative here on earth. And I hope this helps you to live a life of abundance, a life full of, joy, a life of bliss, and most importantly, live a life where you live every day feeling fulfilled, even if you don't have it all. So from next month, our series in the new series, we'll talk about stigma. What is stigma? What are the different types of stigma? How can someone overcome stigmatization? How can you recognize stigmatization? And how can you overcome stigmatization? What then do you do when you see that there are certain stigmas that stick and will never go away? And so throughout the month of February, we'll talk about social stigma, all the different kinds of stigma. And I hope to see you there. My name is Bisola-Mariam. I'm the founder at the Left Handers International Organization. And thank you so much for watching today's episode. God bless you. Abundance is here. There is no lack. And I'll see you.